All right, so I'm going to make this video just in case you are completely lost on what we're doing. And honestly, that's okay. We're all in different places. So I am going to pretend as though you've missed every single day of class this quarter, and we're going to try to catch you up on everything we've been doing in class all in one video. And it's pretty easy. You just need to think about two things that we're doing. One being a poetry portfolio. So what I mean by this is it's a document that we're going to make together, and you are going to write your own poems all in that same document. That's one thing we're doing this quarter. At the end of the quarter, you don't need to worry about this yet, but at the end of the quarter, you are going to take several of those poems and edit, revise them, make them perfect. And we're going to do a couple things with those I won't spoil for you yet. The second important thing is what we're calling our poet presentation. So you have the choice between three poets: Sonia Sanchez, Carolyn Forche, and E.E. Cummings. So we previewed those poets in the first or second week, so you might need to go back to those modules if you want to learn more about the poets. Or you could just do a quick Google search, figure out which one resonates with you, and that just make your choice that way. So because it's quickest, we'll start with the poetry portfolio. So the place where we do all of this is if we go to modules. So everything's going to be in modules. Let's go here to the one that's labeled Poetry Portfolio Upload. So that's Wednesday the 10th of February. And here's what it looks like. And I give you instructions here. So I actually have a whole other video where I explain how to make it. So that's okay. We'll do it again. So we're going to make this poetry portfolio together. So think back to last quarter first and think, did you write any poems last quarter? You should have written at least 3, or at least 1, which would have been your final, right? Because your final was a poem. So that's something you want to go back and find and copy and paste into this portfolio once we make it. So Mr. Abernathy, well, how do I make the portfolio? Well, I'm just going to click here. I'm going to open up a new tab. I'm going to go to Google Docs or Google Drive. However, I organize, stuff in my own computer. Personally, I prefer Drive. So I'm just going to go to drive.google.com. I am going to go to 2021 school year. I'm going to go to 12th grade, right? You can organize this however. Then the important part, I'm going to hit new, and I'm going to hit Google Doc, right? We're just making a blank document. I'm going to give it a slick title because you got to title it before you can share it, where it's just going to be my last name, right? So you would put your last name here. Dot first name dot poetry portfolio. Okay, so if you want to pause here, do this. We'll wait. Okay, so after you title it, right, you don't have to add anything to it yet, but what you can do is hit this button up in the corner where it says share. This is the important part. This is how I have access to it, so I can actually grade the things you put there. You're going to hit share, and you are going to hit here, change link FWPS, and then change this from viewer to editor. Don't just like share it with me directly with my email. Make sure you get the link. And then you're going to, okay, so I'll do that again. Go FWPS, change it from viewer to editor, and then you are copying the link. Well, what do I do with this link? So after I hit this, I'm going to take it back to the assignment, and yours will look something like this. It'll say submit assignment. You're just going to take that URL and you're going to hit Control V because it's already copied. And you're just going to drop it right there. And then you're just going to hit submit assignment. Perfect. So that's your first step. That's a great first step. Well, what if now I actually want to, get the grades for the poems that we've done so far? Good question, right? So the poems, you'll find out, take place on Wednesdays. So we found Wednesday the 10th is when we made our portfolio. Well, the next week, so at this point 2 weeks ago, we had our first poem where you could have written a sonnet, a haiku, a villanelle, or an ode. Now, if you were in class, we actually went over and gave examples of each type of these poems. The ones you'd probably be most familiar with are haikus, right? That's something you might have done like in middle or elementary school, Japanese style of poetry. It's an Avatar: The Last Airbender. Or an ode. Odes are really flexible. It's just like you're hyping up something you really like. You could do like ode to my mug and just like hype up my mug because it has pictures of cats on it. You could do ode to this candle and like talk about whatever you like about the candle. You could do ode to your mom, ode to your cat, ode to your best friend, and just kind of hype them up, talk about why they're so cool. So those are your options. If you want to challenge yourself, sonnet or villanelle would be a great way to do that. And, if all else fails, just give it your best shot. I'm not grading you on how good your poem is. I'm grading you on, did you give it an honest attempt, right? And so once you write that, you're just going to write it in here. So that's really rude of my wife to distract me like that. Okay, so I'm going to just title it something like Week 1 Poem. And then, if I'm doing a sonnet, I'll just say sonnet. And then here I'll write my poem. It's beautiful. So that way, next time Mr. Abernethy goes and looks at your poetry portfolio, he'll say, okay, they went back and they did their first week's poem. Wow, that's a beautiful sonnet. And if you give it a good shot, like you're gonna get a 4, right? If you write a decent amount, it really looks like you were thoughtful about it. I'm not gonna not give you a 4 for that. So the next thing you're gonna do, because you have 2 poems due, is go to the next Wednesday. So after you've written that first poem, you're gonna scroll until you hit Wednesday 224, and you are going to write a genre poem. So this one is so flexible, you can really do whatever you want. Right, but we're thinking about we're kind of trying to push our boundaries. So you're gonna try to write a scary or like a horror poem, right? So something spooky, like something maybe Halloweeny, right? Whatever you want to do. Or you could write a science fiction poem. The first poem I actually got published was a science fiction poem. So it's kind of like a fun way to explore different genres, explore different styles of writing. Or when in doubt, hey, write a romance poem, write a love poem. That could be about someone, something, or even about yourself, right? So these are pretty flexible. The only requirement is it should be at least 21 lines and use some specific details and interesting verbs, right? So don't just have it be like, roses are pretty and I love you, you are so great, right? We want to avoid vague language in our poems because that's what separates, in my opinion, strong poems from weaker poems is vague language versus really specific language. And so here you just write right after that first week, hey, I'd go all the way down and make a new page in my poetry portfolio. And I just go week 2, right? If I choose sci-fi poem. And here's where I'd write my sci-fi poem. And at that point, we've only written 2 poems for fun. You might have more if you pulled in from last quarter, but as a class in 3rd quarter, we've only done 2 poems. So that is what you need to do for your poet presentation, for your poetry portfolio. Now we need to shift gears a little bit. So our poet presentation is what we're doing in class. So let's go kind of back to the beginning. And if we go to modules, right, because everything is going to be in modules, I am going to scroll down to, let's see if I labeled it. That would probably be helpful, Mr. Abernathy. So 222 says graded assignments. I'm going to check here. Okay, so it looks like what I can, yeah. So let's see. I'll just actually go to assignments. That might be a little bit more clear. So I'm going to go to the assignments and click on the one that says make and turn in your poet presentation. So we're going to do something super similar to what we did with our Google Doc, right? And I have pictures and instructions here, but I'll show you again in this video. Is I'm going to go back to whatever folder, however I'm organizing my stuff. I'm going to hit new, but instead of hitting Google Doc, I'm going to hit Google Slides, right? It's like a slideshow, it's like a PowerPoint. So we might use some of that language interchangeably. Same thing, I need to give this a title. Well, let's just title what it is, right? It needs to be mine, so I'm going to put my last name, and then I'm going to put my first name, and then I'm going to call it poet presentation. Okay, easy. So far, so good. Then I need to share and turn in the link to it. So again, you're not just going to type it. Don't type in my name. That's not how we're doing it. What you're doing is you are clicking down here. Anyone with this link can edit. That makes it way easier to grade, leave feedback. And then I'm going to copy that link, take it back to Canvas, right? So yours should look something like this. You're going to hit submit assignment. And you are going to just copy and paste. So Control V, or you can double click and hit paste. And submit and turn in your PowerPoint. So now whenever you update it here, I'll be able to see it back on that assignment. So you don't have to worry about turning it in continuously. So the handy thing with this side of class is I've already done a whole complete poet presentation for you. So I chose another poet and I've already done each of the slides for that poet so you can see what it could look like. So let's go back to that first, here, let me get out of student view. Let me go back to the module that's from, I think, Monday. So this, on Mondays when we did the first two slides. So the first two slides are really easy. You get the information from Wikipedia, right? So the important thing at this point is you need to know which poet you're studying. So we have our poet options here. So if you want to see kind of like what their poetry looks like, you can click on these links and see, you know, who you're really interested in actually spending some time with this quarter. E. Cummings, Sonia Sanchez, Carolyn Forche, really just like, yeah, Google them, read their Wikipedia pages, see who maybe you are interested in. So what are we doing? Okay, so make sure you've communicated with me who your choice poet is. At this point, you could just do that through email, and I update the list of who's doing which poet as we go through. So let me actually get out of this page. So now we need to find, it was sometime last week where we started doing our poet presentation. Oh, just kidding, it was last Friday. So it's been a while. So I'm gonna click on Friday, 2/19. Actually, let's just retitle it so we can find it more easily. Poet presentation part 1. Good, okay. So now you can find it. It's called Poet Presentation Part 1. And you can see here, okay. So we want to find a cool like background or theme for our slideshow. So right, we don't just want a plain black background. So maybe try to find one that you feel like gives off the same vibes that your poet's giving off. Like, ooh, like this one looks kind of cool. Maybe if I'm doing Sonia Sanchez, right, this could be my Sonia Sanchez design. All right, and this is where you get to be as creative as you want. I have a link here on Canvas, right, where a website where you can go and like download different themes into your Google Docs. But I mean, at the end of the day, the information is what's most important. So part one, this first slide, you need your poet's name, a picture of your poet, and then 2 to 3 reviews of your poet's work. So if you just Google like E.E. Cummings reviews, you'll find on different websites like people reviewing his books, his poetry, that sort of thing. And as long as you say where you got those from, you could just copy and paste. So luckily I have my example PowerPoint where I can show you exactly what this should look like for your poet. So here I have what should be on the slide. Then I have an example of what the slide should look like, right? So I have a picture, I have the guy's name, and I have a couple reviews, like here's a review from a magazine, here's a review from a website. Okay. So then my second slide is my biography. So I need to talk about who my poet is, right? So here I'm just gonna basically read Wikipedia and then say that information in my own words. Right, and try to make it pretty as I do so. So you want to say like where they're from, what era or decades did they create most in. So really like look at maybe on Wikipedia it says when their books got published. So see like, oh, it looks like Sonia Sanchez got a lot of her stuff published in the 70s or the 60s, right? Where whatever you're kind of thinking about that. What genre do they work most in, right? Poetry is not a genre. You need to talk about like what type of poetry specifically. Then figure out, right, do some research. What are they most well known for? Is it for their poetry? Is it for their political activism? Is it for their reporting? I don't know. It could be any of those depending on who you choose. And then you're going to add another image. This could be like a book cover or a photograph of your poet doing something maybe not poetry related, just to try to help understand who they are as a person. So that example slide looks like this, right? Where I talk if they're from California, here's the different genres they're in, here's what he's most well known for. And here's like a GIF he's in, because depending, like if your person's still alive, right, they might have interviews, they might have GIFs on the internet. So those are the first 2 slides. This is worth 1 standard. It shouldn't take you that long. These are famous people, so their information is out there. Okay, so those are the first 2 slides. That's a grade. Another grade is your 3rd slide. So what we call part 1.5, because we're adding it this quarter. So this is actually from Thursday, so I'm gonna retitle this to help you find it. Poet presentation part 1.5. Okay, so we actually did this in class on Thursday and Friday. You were in breakout rooms. But what it is, right, so here's some more information about your poets. We're trying to figure out what political moment they're responding to with their work. You can make the case that any artist or writer is responding to, what's going on in the world. And so we're calling it political moments. We talked about this in the first week of class. So I'm just going to tell you, because we have this discussion in class, right? E. Cummings is probably responding to like the First, Second World Wars. He fought in the First World War. Sonia Sanchez is responding to the civil rights movement in the 60s, then the Black arts movement in the 90s, the treatment and lives of Black folks in the United States. Carolyn Forche is responding to a couple things, largely the Salvadorian Civil War, in which she was a reporter and wrote a whole book of poetry about, or poverty in the United States. So those are kind of the 2 things that we can see in their works they're responding to. And I have down here some of the poems, depending on who your poet is, where you can find some of these themes, some of these examples of what they're responding to in politics. So here's your 3rd slide, and it might look a little difficult. I don't think it will. It took me about, 15, 20 minutes to do my example. But you're going to need to have read your poet. So if you haven't read, so you're thinking maybe, oh, I want to do Carolyn Forche, you actually need to go through and read some of her poetry. and I have a collection of her poetry down here. All you have to do, click on this link, read through some of those poems. It'll take you, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes to read through them once, but you want to maybe spend some more time than that actually reading the poems. And it is cool because you can comment and you can see other people's comments on the poems, which is a handy thing to do. Look, so like people are translating things for you, looking stuff up for you. So definitely use this resource if you have not yet. Okay, so you're responding, you're trying to answer the question, what political moment is your poet responding to? And remember, political moment is kind of a vague term on purpose. It could have been something that happened on like one day, or it could have been several years long. It could have been a decade, right? So you're going to write a paragraph where you answer that question. I have a template here. So you're going to need to like pull lines from their poems, and it could be any poem. It doesn't have to be the ones in the selection I gave you to help you answer that question. And then include 1 to 2 pictures of said political moment. And I'm totally okay with you using my example template and just kind of filling in the blanks, but you're still going to need to use actual words from the poems when you do so. So if we look at my model poet presentation, I did this. Like I sat down and did this already. It's part of my teacher belief that I don't assign stuff that I wouldn't want to do myself, right? And I think this is interesting. I think it's cool and important to learn about other people, especially kind of with that poetic mind frame. So here's my example where I do this, right? I think that this poet I chose, his performance name is Clipping, but he's responding to the Black Lives Matter movement in a lot of his work. So I have a GIF here if you want to be fancy, or you could just do a picture. We have a picture of a protest here. And I do a write-up. Yours doesn't have to be this long, right? Remember, I give you this template if you want to use it. I was just having fun with it, so I maybe wrote a little bit longer than you would need to. And remember, we're trying to keep each of these like individual things on one slide each, right? We don't want it to spread into this whole big thing. So, right, it's okay to make your font a little bit small. This isn't like a presentation or you're giving in front of the class. So if you do these things as of the weekend of the 27th and the 28th of February, you're going to be caught up. If you do these things, you're going to be all caught up. And that way, when we start on Monday, right, you can actually engage with class. You don't have to worry about maybe some stuff you've missed. It is really important that you come to class, because another thing we're doing that you're not going to be graded on or anything is we're reading a story together. And I think it's an important story to hear. So that is everything. If parts of this were unclear or you still have questions, definitely reach out. Office hours Monday, Tuesday, Thursday from 1 to 1:30, or Wednesday from 11 to noon. So please utilize those. It's your last quarter of English, maybe ever, but definitely in high school, right? So I don't want you having to do this over the summer. Remember, even if you failed last quarter, as long as you still get a B or better, this quarter, I'll go back and change last quarter's grade to a C. So you should be able to pass senior English. If stuff's going on at home that's preventing you, I'll give you time. I won't put grades in. You just have to let me know. I'm not a mind reader. If something's going on, just reach out. You can be as vague as you need to, and we can work from there. All right. Have a good whatever time of the day it is.